Hello, dear listener. Tonight's story is a slow burn, so if you're listening to this on a walk, I suggest you take the long way home. If you're in a bath, let the water run hot again. Let this one wrap around you like silk, like smoke, like a memory that you're not sure is yours. So settle in. We're about to get intimate. Welcome back to Lost and Found, the podcast where we're figuring things out in real time, together. I'm your host, Carmen Vit, and today I want to read you a story that I recently wrote while I was here in Vietnam. And it's been interesting because I love writing stuff like this, and I think maybe you'll see a different side of me, I don't know. But a part of me has always been kind of scared to put it out there, so I never know what the feedback is going to be. But I kind of told myself that this is what makes me happy. I love writing pieces like this. So if I want to be a serious writer and I want to put my voice out there, I need to get over it because a lot of people write a lot more hectic stuff than this. But that being said, this might be a little bit PG. Also, it is currently 1:30 a.m. and I'm in Hanoi in my little bunk bed in this hostel. And it's a Friday night. I'm recording this because everybody's out. I literally had to stay home because I've been stealing moments to record this podcast since I've been staying in a hostel. The last couple of months, I've only been staying in like mostly Airbnbs and private rooms. So it's been really easy. But since I've been in Hanoi, I've been in this hostel. It's just impossible to record. So we're really intimate right now. I'm in my little bunk bed. The curtains are closed. It's the middle of the night. Everybody's out. I'm about to read to you a short story I wrote called The Fifth Lover. I hope you love it. I spent my 24th birthday smoking on a rooftop in the north of India, bats circling overhead. Little black bodies slicing through an orange sky. Just beyond the balcony railing lay Lake Pichola, golden lights rippling across the water, boats drifting lazily towards Monsoon Palace. That was the summer I felt invincible. I wore these heavy silver rings and skirts so long I had to lift them up when climbing the stairs. I was perpetually sunburnt and grinning, only occasionally troubled by the faint thought that all the sun and smoke and whiskey might age me faster. Then again, aging felt as abstract to me then as math or marriage. It was the first summer since I was 15 that I wasn't either in love or heartbroken, and it felt fucking fantastic. I belonged to no one but myself, and maybe in a way to the lake, to India. In the 3 months since I'd arrived, I had started wrapping myself in shawls, replaced my perfume with essential oils, and ate a lupalak with near religious devotion. I burned incense before baths. I lost my hairbrush and made no effort to replace it, letting my curls grow unruly, the kind of tangled that no lover would dare attempt to tame. I liked that, the wildness of it. I danced most nights, wrote most days. Time felt melted, untethered. Nobody I loved knew exactly where I was, and that too felt like freedom, the kind that lightens the bones. I was renting a $14 a night room in a crumbling Haveli-turned hostel. It had bay windows that opened onto a narrow balcony overlooking the lake. I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. I slept with the windows open, the breeze carrying the scent of garam masala and the lake's earthy undertones straight into my bed. I slept naked. I rose with the sun. Somehow that felt very 24. That night up on the rooftop, a man I hadn't seen before climbed the stairs. Annabelle and I had already claimed our usual chaise lounge, a bottle of cheap whiskey between us, the ashtray filling up. Our conversations drifted between gossip and the philosophically esoteric, as they often did. Between lazy drags, I watched him watch me. He was older, balding. A thick grey beard curled down his chest. Tattoos of Hindu gods crawled up his neck, Shiva, Ganesh, maybe the Bhagavad Gita etched in script. He had the posture of someone who, in his prime, could have either killed man or held a perfect shrikasana. Perhaps both. After so long as a white blonde woman in India, I had grown numb to the weight of stairs. They no longer fazed me, they simply existed, like a feature of my own body. But his was different. His gaze wasn't curious or lustful or reverent. It was amused, detached, almost tender, like a grandfather watching children play in a park. Eventually, I walked over to him. "All right," I said. Not quite a question, not quite an answer. He held out his hand. "Let me read your palm." I blinked. Unexpected, but interesting. I'd never had my palm read. At that point in my life, I didn't know what I believed in. Some days I was a complete nihilist, but not in the tragic way. Other days I felt a thread connecting me to everything. The sky, the bats, the barefoot girls selling marigolds on the street. I sat across from him, legs folded, skirt pooling around my thighs. His weathered fingers took my hand like it was something sacred. "When's your birthday?" "Today?" He smiled like he already knew. In a low voice, he began speaking about my past, my relationship with my parents, my brother. Details so precise I half expected Annabelle to leap out from behind a pillar yelling, "Surprise!" Some elaborate prank. But it was real and oddly quiet. He said that I'd lived many lives, that my karma was strong, that I was a saint in a previous one, which might explain, he added with a sly grin, your decidedly unsaintly behavior in this one. "Making up for lost time," I replied, raising a brow. He grew still for a moment, then softly, "He is here with us, you know." "Who is?" "Your grandfather. He will be watching over you for the rest of your life." At that, my eyes stung, my cheeks flushed wet. My grandfather had died 3 months earlier. I'd been rushing home from some travels in Central America to say goodbye, but a delayed layover turned into a missed moment, and I didn't make it. We'd always been close. The man didn't flinch. He simply watched my emotions, quietly, unspectacularly, as if he were just there to witness the unspooling of something. "Your palm is etched," he said. "It wants to be read, giving up its secrets." I don't remember everything he said. There were things about lifelines, brain lines, about wealth and tragedy, and strange little predictions that have since blurred in the haze of memory. But there are 3 things he told me that I remember very, very clearly. 1, that I would never have children. 2, that I would die young. And 3, that I would have 4 serious lovers before I met the love of my life. But it won't be good. Yours will be a dark and turbulent love, not something easily survived. Well, fuck me. Stupidly, I tried doing the math in my head. I was pretty sure I'd already been in love more than 4 times. In fact, I fall in love approximately twice a month. With strangers, smiles, stories, possibilities. Not that I was in any rush to meet my so-called soulmate, if I even believed in such things, but I was curious. I liked bodies pressed against mine in the soft hours before waking. I liked long, meandering conversations in bathtubs, the dreaming up of futures that would never materialize, the sharing of pasts like heirlooms laid out between two bare spread knees, the slow unveiling of a self I'd spent years deliberately constructing, intricate yet knowable, fascinating and independent yet soft enough to want to protect. It wasn't that I was lying, I wasn't deceiving anyone, but I was a writer, and writers construct. It's in our nature to craft meaning where others skim, to reveal just enough to seem profound, to draw someone in with the illusion of intimacy while staying cleverly, creatively, just out of reach. And if I'm honest, I was young and surprisingly good at flirting, especially since my heart and ego had been thoroughly decimated by a two-pack reincarnated fuckboy earlier in my 20s. I'd fallen for him with the wide-eyed devotion of a child. I was certain we'd spend the rest of our lives together. Turns out I had just mistaken desire and a few clever lies for the divine. After that, I'd taken up the game of breaking hearts, and to my mild horror, I was quite good at it. Too good. It gave me more satisfaction than a well-adjusted person should probably care to admit. Sometimes, honestly, I worried I wasn't a good person. But then again, if I were really that bad, would I be worried at all? The palm reader's words haunted me for exactly 33 minutes until Annabelle and I ordered another round. By the time I woke the next morning, the noon sun burning across my calves, I'd nearly forgotten the whole encounter. But later, weaving our way through Udaipur's cobbled streets, dodging cows and rickshaws and street vendors peddling sugarcane and saffron, something else surfaced from the fog of memory. He'd said I could save my love life if I wore an emerald on my pinky finger, or fasted on Thursdays. Well, I wasn't about to start fasting on Thursdays, so I dragged Annabelle to the nearest gem shop. The owner was a man with turmeric-stained fingers and buttons straining at the belly. He looked at me with an amused sort of pity as I explained what I was after. "Ah," he said knowingly, "the love life. He must get white girls like me in here all the time, half spiritual, half superstitious, desperate to rewrite some fate we only half believed in. Maybe the palm reader and the shopkeeper were cousins. Maybe they ran the con together." I didn't care. The emerald suited me. 90 minutes and 8,000 rupees later, we stepped back into the sun. We decided we'd go dancing that night, someplace proper, away from the sleepy rooftops and hostile crowd, somewhere with neon lights and bass that shook the floor. So we ordered chai on the street corner by the bridge, and without a word, broke our nightly promise to quit smoking. A promise we made religiously every night before we curled up in bed next to each other, and broke promptly the next day the second we caught a whiff of coffee or chai. Later that evening, we got ready like girls with nowhere to be but everywhere to arrive. Slowly, indulgently, all soft limbs and loud laughter, drunk on each other and our own reflections. We took turns in front of the mirror playing Fleetwood Mac, spinning each other around. Time felt elastic, tilted, as if it bent around our joy. Some days I could hardly believe there had been a life before this, before Annabelle, before the tiny room that smelled like incense and lake water, where we slept tangled, forming rituals around and of each other. We'd met only a month ago, but something in us moved the same, like we came from the same storm. Sometimes I wondered if I loved her like a sister or a lover, but I didn't have a sister, so I didn't know if that kind of fierce devotion and casual sexuality was normal in sisterhood. I only knew that something in our togetherness made the world feel like it expanded and contracted in rhythm with us. A heady, youthful sort of solipsism I indulged in loudly, albeit a little self-consciously. We left the old town behind in a cab, watching the city grow shinier and louder. Glass apartment buildings rising where Mughal arches and painted Haveli windows once stood. The future swallowing the past, one story at a time. When we stepped out of the air-conditioned car into the velvet heat of night, the pavement beneath us thrummed with bass from somewhere nearby. A man in black stood outside a curtain-draped doorway. He gave us a quick once-over, then pulled the curtain back, revealing smoke, strobes, and bodies moving in sync under low violet light. Heaven or the underworld, it was hard to tell in that light. Inside, the club was alive with the rich and restless. Young Indians in designer clothes brushing shoulders, laughing too loudly. A man's hand grazed my waist as he passed. I didn't flinch. I liked this part. The moment before you know who you'll meet, how the night will unspool and bleed. For the first time in months, I heard English music. Even a few Spanish songs made their way into the mix. I forgot about the people around me, abandoned my shoes in a dark corner. I danced like I always do. Fully, selfishly. The hem of my dress gathered in my hands, curls stuck to my forehead. I relished the feeling of the cool air on my exposed back. Loved getting sweaty, catching glimpses of my shoulders glistening under the neon lights. I loved how, in moments like this, I felt both like the center of the universe and like nothing at all. Just limbs and light, rhythm and hot breath. I dropped fully into my body. My hips moved intuitively. My feet knew exactly where to land. Annabelle and I danced like that for what felt like hours. Later, when I opened my eyes, a man stood in front of me, smiling, reaching for my hands. Hate when they interrupt. It's not that I mind dancing with men, I just don't want to be pulled out of my body for someone who can't keep rhythm. He was handsome in the generic way people say men are handsome. You know, slicked back hair, expensive shirt. But off, like the picture had been misaligned somehow. He took my hands, trying to lead, but it was awkward and too eager and offbeat. I spun away, closed my eyes, and found myself in the music again. But of course he came back and made another attempt. I was just about to excuse myself when a voice came from behind. "Hi." I turned, unexpectedly met by a broad chest. The top buttons of a black cotton shirt undone, revealing just a sliver of collarbone. I had to tilt my head up to see his face, and at 6 feet, that's not something I'm particularly used to. "Hi," I said. He looked over my head toward the man I just escaped. "Apologies, mate," he said. "I know you were dancing, but I just had to say something to the beautiful lady. Do you mind?" The first guy held up his hands in mock surrender, but lingered. He didn't move. "Are you going to ask me if I mind?" I said. He tilted his head. "Do you?" "We'll see." He grinned at that. Oh no, there it was, those playful eyes. A dare in the way they landed on me, that arrogance I liked so much. My one damn fatal flaw. He pointed to the bar. "See those two idiots back there? Those are my best friends. And I've been watching you all night. And I told them I regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't come talk to you." He laughed, eyes flitting away for a second as if deciding to reveal something that he might regret. "Yeah, I told them I met my wife tonight." I raised a brow. "Your wife?" "I watch you dance," he said. and I see our kids running around in the backyard. Oof, now that I hadn't heard before. Cheeky, ridiculous, but I respect it. Maybe it was the smell of smoke, sex, and tequila in the air, or the way his words took me off guard, but for a second, I thought about my grandfather who said the exact same thing to his friends when he met my grandmother at a party 55 years ago. It was family lore. Does that line always work? I asked. He ran a hand through his hair. I've never done this before, I swear. His voice cracked a little. You're just something else. Now that part I had heard before. Still, I felt the slightest shift in my pulse, a flutter, uninvited. The other man had disappeared and I hadn't even noticed. And the tall stranger leaned in. I caught the smooth trace of his accent. Kiwi, but faded at the edges, like it had been worn down by years spent elsewhere. Too many long flights and foreign bars. Dance with me, he breathed into my hair. It wasn't a question. He twirled me once, deliberately. Wow, he mouthed, allowing his eyes to roam over my body, my hips, my eyes, unhurried. Then his arms slinked around my lower waist and pulled me closer. I rarely got the chance to dance with someone so much taller than me, and it was intoxicating. The ease with which he guided my body, it felt natural, fluid, like we'd done this before in some other life. Then again, apparently I was a saint in my previous life. His hands found the bare skin of my waist under the flimsy material of my shirt. I looped my arms around his neck, his mouth hovering just inches from mine. The air between us grew thick, heavy. We teased each other for what felt like a long time. Lips brushing but never touching, breath mingling, a throbbing low down in my stomach. At one point he leaned down and he said into my neck, "Dance for me." Again, not a question. Then he stepped away, sat down at a high-top chair just off the floor. Eyes locked on me, waiting. I turned away from him and let the music move through me, arms circling above my head, hips rolling slowly. I could feel him watching with a quiet, undistracted attention that made me feel like I was not just being seen but witnessed. The heat of his gaze traced a map across my skin, and even without looking, I knew exactly where his eyes landed. Each glance like a match to the surface of my body. He watched me with reverence, awe, lust, like I belonged to him. Or perhaps, like I could never belong to him at all. I don't usually do what men tell me to do, but when he said dance for me, something in me wanted to obey. Somewhere between verses, I felt him behind me, his body pressing into mine. His hands gathered the tangle of my hair and lifted it, fingers threading through at the base of my neck. His other hand reached around, tracing the hollow of my collarbone, pressing down. When his lips met the space between my shoulder and my neck, in the middle of that crowded room, I remember thinking it was more intimate than most of the sex I've ever had. Desire flared in my stomach. It spread outward, a blooming warmth that flushed my skin. In that moment, every nerve ending I possessed existed in my neck, in the curve of my spine, in the dip of my back where he was pressed against. With one deliberate movement, he turned me around by the hips and held me there, flush against him, our faces just inches apart. Breath on breath, that magnetic pause before the undoing. And then finally, we kissed, melted into each other, slow, deep, the kind of kiss that undoes you in increments. My hands curled into his shirt, his fingers tightened in my hair, our mouths moved together like they were already familiar. His rhythm matched mine perfectly. He kissed like he was already inside of me. His lips trailed down my neck, along my jaw, back to my mouth again, every touch intentional, slow, every glance asking and taking all at once, his hand on my waist, then on my back, beneath my chin, tilting my mouth up towards him, and pressed against my collarbone again, as if anchoring himself to the moment. To me, time turned liquid, the music faded. Outside that room, it felt as though India itself had ceased to exist. For a moment, I forgot there were things like lakes and rickshaws and noise. I always seemed to lose myself in rooms like this, where the rest of the world blurred around the parameters of two bodies. When we finally pulled apart, his voice was low and rough in my ear. "You know I'm gonna marry you, right?" And I laughed, breathless and dizzy, because in that moment I could almost believe it. Almost. But romance between travelers never lost. You pass through each other like weather, like something beautiful and brief, a storm that leaves the sky different, but only for a moment. Still, something in me wanted to believe. Not in him necessarily, but in the moment, in the warmth of it, the possibility. I think I've always had a soft spot for the kind of magic that doesn't last. Oh, but what a story it would be to tell our kids one day that their father saw me across his smoky room and told his friends that he'd met his wife. What a beautiful thing to believe in. It could become family lore. Of course, if the prophecy were even half as accurate as everything the palm reader had said about my past, then there were obviously a few holes in this fairy tale. Firstly, he said that I was going to die young. And then, of course, he said that I wasn't going to have kids. And apparently, I still had a few heartbreaks left. A few more nights like this one. But oh, how I loved playing at soulmates. In this fleeting, weightless life I've built for myself, filled with movement and departure, there's a certain undeniable romance in the pretense of permanence, a bittersweetness in the make-believe. On rooftops in bars, on narrow beds with no sheets, it felt good to belong to someone, to a moment, if only for a little while. What's one more heartbreak in the morning? Besides, I've always found broken promises so very sexy. But did it happen exactly like that? I couldn't tell you anymore, honestly. Memory slips. Not like water, but like silk around hips. Soft, seductive, impossible to know where skin ends and fabric begins, where the body stops and the story starts. Some days I remember us returning to that lake years later. We got married beneath a canopy of marigolds, our hands bound in red silk, barefoot and sun-warmed. Our children, 3 of them, blonde and bilingual, ran wild through the Haveli's crooked hallways, calling the street dogs by name. And on our anniversary each year, we told them the story of how we met, They never tired of it. It became legend. Family lore passed down like heirlooms. The rooftop, the whiskey, the violet light. Other days, I remember the storm. How the sky cracked open above Lake Pichola. How we left our clothes piled beneath a Rajasthani neem tree and ran, naked, laughing into the water. And how the thunder clapped once, sharply, and I was gone. After I would walk the banks of the lake, barefoot in the dark, a ghost in silver rings and tangled hair, searching for the girl who thought freedom could be held like a flame without ever getting burned. And sometimes I think I never met him at all. That he was just a mirage, stitched together from all the men I once loved, but never got to keep. A collage of desire and grief. A beautiful, faceless fiction. And of course, there's the version where Annabelle and I never made it to the club that night. Where the space between us dissolved entirely over the coming weeks, and I learned the feel of her mouth like a secret I was suddenly ready to keep. Slow afternoons with her fingers tracing the curve of my spine. A soft inevitability. But on nights like this, when I trade whiskey for wine, and I sit in front of the lake with a tattered notebook open on my lap, I'm just a 24-year-old girl in a tiny room in Udaipur, drafting a story that might also be a memory. Now you're probably wondering which parts are true, which details are mine, which are borrowed, which are invented entirely. But that's the point, isn't it? It's not that I'm lying. I'm not deceiving anyone. But I am a writer, and writers construct. It's in our nature to craft meaning where others skim. We craft intimacy like an offering, just close enough to touch, but always, always out of reach. So can you feel it? How the air between us is thickening. Hot. Heavy. The details blur. The story warps. You're too close now. You can't see what's real anymore. You thought you were just reading, right? Didn't you? But look at you now, leaning in, breath hitched, waiting. And now I'm there. Lips at your neck, my fingers grazing the base of your throat, my mouth against your ear, whispering, so tell me, how do you remember it? Ooh. Okay. I loved reading that to you. And sitting in this little dorm bed with the curtains closed and nobody's here, it felt very intimate. I'm just so happy nobody walked in. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for listening to my writing. Thank you for subscribing. And as always, please leave a rating and a review. Don't send this episode to your mother, but send it to somebody who needs to hear it. I'm Carmen Vit. Don't forget to get a little bit lost this week. That's where the magic finds you. Until next time.